So today, we're going to talk about the convergence of smart grid, smart metering, as well as smart cities. And we have a presenter, Amy Ossaker, who's the Executive Director of Envision Charlotte in Charlotte, North Carolina, who's going to tell us about the Smart Cities project there, which is really out at the front edge of smart city thought and systems. And she's going to tell us about some of the benefits and goals they've achieved and what's ahead in the future. And I think an important thing to keep in mind here is that we're taking this technology and we're taking this data to the next level and measuring our success on something new. That's economic growth, that's livability for the citizens and businesses, and environmental sustainability. So with that, I'm going to welcome Amy Ossaker to share our presentation with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Itron, for having me out here today. You guys are extremely lucky today. You didn't even know it, but I am debuting Prezi and not PowerPoint. And this is our first time to debut this new presentation, so if it goes bad, I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for that. Anyway, thank you again for having me here. I always love talking about Envision Charlotte. It is absolutely fantastic what the city has started to do and where we have come and where we are going. And so I look forward to sharing that story with you. Now I gotta get it to work, right? Here we go. So in 2010, Duke Energy and Center City Partners came together and decided that they needed a sustainability initiative for our uptown, or downtown as other people like to say, Charlotte. And so they decided that they wanted to reduce energy in commercial buildings by 20%. And so it was fantastic that they came up with this idea. Jim Rogers, the CEO of Duke at the time, pitched it to Clinton Global Initiative, and they said, yes, that sounds great, come to New York. Let's have it be a Clinton Global Initiative. And so they did that, and then they had to come back to Charlotte and figure out actually how to do it. So what they decided to do is they did a little homework, and they called other cities around the country and asked them about their sustainability initiatives and how they were doing it and what they were doing to find some lessons learned. And one of the things that they found was other cities said, just have a narrow focus. Don't be all things to all people, because you tend to try to do everything and you don't do anything great. So what they did is they defined it that, all right, let's look at buildings 10,000 square feet and over of commercial use only. There are 64 of those in uptown Charlotte. 61 of them signed an energy pledge to reduce their use by 20%. It's just unprecedented, but they took it a step further. They said, all right, we want to put an energy meter, shadow meter, in your basement of your building, and we're going to take that data and we're going to send it to the cloud, we're going to aggregate it, normalize it, and then we're going to send it back down to a kiosk so that we can start measuring what we're actually doing. Again, unprecedented that we have networked 61 buildings in Charlotte, public, private, all different owners. You've got the city, you've got the county. It's unbelievable feat what they did. And I have to tell you that I get calls from all over the world with the fact that they were able to accomplish this. What they did back then is they created the baseline. So we have a baseline so that we know that when we implement programs, we know their effectiveness, because you can't manage what you don't measure. And so we also wanted to make sure that whatever we did was an excellent blueprint that we could replicate in other cities. So Duke Energy then launched their Smart Energy Now program, which was the behavior piece of Envision Charlotte. So in all of our pillars, what we do is we start with behavior, and then we focus on the buildings and getting them, their equipment better utilized. So we started with that, where they sent out a team of people to go talk with these different buildings and implement programs to get the individuals in there to reduce their energy. One of the most popular programs that they have is Crab It, You're It. And so it's a game that you play where crabs, go to the light. So if you leave your lights on, you get crabbed, and you get a crab on your desk. And one of the examples is Chiquita is headquartered in Charlotte. They have 5 floors. They were sub-metered. And so they took this to a whole new level. Like, we had to keep sending them crabs because they kept using the crabs and everyone was getting crabbed. But they measured every week their progress on lowering their energy bill through the sub-meter. And then at the end, they'd have pizza parties for the right floors. But it was fantastic. It really rose to awareness with the employees. They engaged in playing it, and they reduced their energy use. So in this last June 2015, I totally jumped ahead. It's actually June 2014. We announced the first wave of results, an 8.4% reduction in energy use in those uptown buildings. 6.2 was on behavior. The rest was on upgrades to buildings. That's unbelievable. That's also $10 million in savings to our buildings. What's great about this program is, well, all of our programs, saving the buildings $10 million makes it less expensive to do business in Charlotte, and therefore more businesses are going to be flocking to Charlotte. So I'm pretty sure in the next 10 years you'll all be living there. Just go ahead and point that out now. It's a fantastic place. I can tell you of all kinds of great areas if you'd like that later. We also have implemented an energy roundtable. This will be the second wave of our energy savings. So we partnered with UNC Charlotte and their SIBS department, which is Sustainably Integrated Building and Sites, their professor and students. And this is a fantastic program for our buildings. What we do is we go into a building and we audit it and look at all of the different systems and come up with the best way that they can achieve 20% reduction in energy use. What's awesome about this program is it's a huge education thing for these buildings. Some of these buildings just can't even read their bill. And while Duke Energy is a great partner and they'll explain your bill and they'll come out and do all this, they feel, I think sometimes when they feel vendor agnostic and project agnostic, they're much more apt to bring in a third party like that to look at that. We've had 3 buildings go through the process. We're actually analyzing it to let everyone know how much we've identified in these buildings, how much savings we could potentially see. We've also helped one of the buildings go through the RFP process, which was very interesting. It was on a lighting project, and so we brought 3 vendors in, and we looked at all of their different proposals. We sat through them. We made sure that they incorporated the Duke incentives and any other breaks that there were out there. But the differences between the 3 proposals, it was very difficult to say which was doing what. And the building loved it to be able to kind of compare apples to apples, because when you're talking energy efficiency, we all know, I mean, there's a million solutions. Everybody has the magic bullet. I get a call once a day, Amy, I can get your downtown 20% more efficient by tomorrow. Like you and the 50 other people who just called me before that. So it's been a great program with UNC Charlotte. After we focused on energy, we added 3 more pillars. We added water, air, and waste. Water is our big program that we're in the middle, we're entrenched in right now with Itron. And we're doing the same thing that we did with energy. We're going to install shadow meters so we can start collecting the water data to set a baseline, and then as we implement programs, we can see if we are getting it below that 20%. As of right now, we have agreements with CMUD and with Duke, and hopefully soon we'll start installing. That's been a challenge when you're dealing with a lot of different entities, but soon, hopefully, we'll have that installation, and by, I would like to say, the end of the year, we'll start gathering that data, we'll send it up to the cloud, and we'll send it back down to the kiosks, just like we did in energy. So there's the equipment. We're gonna, like I said, send it up, aggregate it. We have 22 buildings that we're working with. Verizon is our communications partner, and they send it back down to the kiosk. Under the air pillar, right now, we are just adding a new board member to start really focusing on air. There's 2 things that we're going to be looking at in air. We're going to be looking at alternative transportation, trying to get people out of their single occupancy cars. The other thing is we're going to look at how we're reducing energy in buildings and what that translates to the impact on our air. We'll do that with water and with waste as well. So air is one of those, it's very difficult because you can't say these 21 buildings because the air we all share. So this has been a challenging one for us, but in the next year we'll start looking at the programs that we'll implement for air. Waste is one of my favorites. This is like such an interesting situation in my opinion. So last year we did audits of all of our buildings, and we came up with the fact that we had 41 million pounds of waste leaving our uptown buildings every day. IBM Smarter Cities came in and analyzed that of 7 buildings. And we also, by the way, went dumpster diving. Thankfully, I wasn't employed by them at that moment, so I did not have to go dumpster diving. But where they analyzed it and found that in those 7 dumpsters, the companies were throwing away $100,000 worth of recyclables. So they were paying to have people take away money. One of the things with the waste industry is that it's very behind on technology. You know, unlike submetering energy or water, there's not a meter for waste yet. But we just recently announced our partnership with Envio. Envio is a company out of Europe, and they actually have sensors that go into the waste receptacles. And so we're going to pilot this project with Duke, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the city, and the county, which when you have those 5 big entities sitting at a table, the waste industry will sit there with you. So it's fantastic. And what we're going to do is we're going to gather real-time waste data from all 61 buildings. Unprecedented. And what we're going to do, what it looks like is, that's the little sensor, that's the install kit, that's how it goes into the waste receptacle, and then we'll send it up to the cloud. And so what this will do, it actually measures volume, temperature, and then it also movement, so you can tell when it's being moved. What's really fascinating about this is right now the way that the US is run, the different commercial haulers run Tuesdays, they come pick up your trash. That's it, you're set on a schedule. You could have one piece of trash in there or the thing could be overflowing, they come on Tuesdays. What this is gonna show is how much trash is in those. Now the haulers have asked that they provide that information back to the different entities, which is what we'll let them do. But what we're hoping for is long-term, we get more like Europe and do dynamic routing so that the haulers aren't rolling trucks when there's no need to roll them and polluting the air and hurting our streets and all that good stuff. So this could really, in my opinion, revolutionize the way the waste industry is done in the United States. Back down to the kiosk. Our Champions program is the behavior piece of everything that we do in Envision. So Duke Energy started this, where they went out and trained champions for the different behaviors and all of the different, for energy. We incorporated those champions into our program, and we now train them on all 4 pillars. So we go in and train them on how to recycle, and why it makes sense not to drive your car every single day. One of the things that we're looking at doing is partnering with a company called Julebug. And if y'all want to, you can go on iOS or Android and download this app. But it's a game that you can play that teaches you how to be sustainable, using a coffee mug instead of a coffee cup, those sorts of things. Once you do the action, you take a picture of it, you can tweet it, you can Facebook post it, you get all these points. So what we're looking to do, we're gonna roll out this app for all 61 of our buildings, and we're gonna have buildings competing against each other, floors competing with each other, doing like we did with Chiquita, only for all of the different pillars. And so one of the neat things about this is we're connecting a lot of the different entities within Charlotte. So we'll partner with our city in terms of trash and when they have recycling days. Or we'll partner with transportation and send alerts if it's a high ozone day. Maybe you get extra points that day for taking the light rail in. So what it does too is it brings in a lot of our partners, and we can have a lot of synergy together to actually get our entire city doing more sustainable initiatives. And the last thing I'd like to kind of talk about is when you take all 4 of these pillars, they're individuals, and as most companies have individual silos. You have gas, you have water, you have transportation, you know, your different silos. What we want to do in the end is network all of those together and really truly start to build a smart city. So we're partnering with UNC Charlotte and Verizon, and we're looking at a way to smart up the city. So after you gather all this data, and we're already seeing some of the results, right? But if you start looking at the nexus between water and energy, you know, where can that lead us? What can we do now that we have all that data? UNC Charlotte is a big data university, and so they're just, every time we stick any kind of sensor on everything, like, can we have the data? Can we have the data? So I think we're on an interesting frontier with data in terms of what are we gonna do with it, and how are we gonna find efficiencies? And, you know, are there opportunities for businesses out of the data that comes to it? There's obviously all of the concerns about privacy, but we aggregate everything right now and send it out. However, it'd be a lot easier if, you know, we had full disclosure on energy use, because then people would want to reduce their energy. So there is a trend in the US with more cities going around energy efficiency disclosures. So who knows, maybe it'll hit Charlotte by the time you all live there. That would be excellent. So that's kind of the framework of what Envision Charlotte is looking to do right now. And so that's where we are on each of the pillars. And so I thought I'd open it up now to questions about the city, in case you're moving there. Envision, and she's got a microphone. Crickets. Did I cover everything that well? I did not cover everything that well. You have to have questions.
Thanks, Amy. What are some of your longer-term goals in terms of water conservation and energy efficiency?
Well, on the water side, I think what's going to happen is once we start censoring everything up, it's not going to have the behavioral effects that energy does. I think we're going to have to look for bigger opportunities in leaks and looking more holistically at the city. So while we have 22 buildings right now that we're going to censor, I would like to see us censoring much larger scale and really looking at some bigger projects when it comes to checking the leaks around the city, which, you know, our CMUD or, you know, our Mecklenburg Utility Department, they don't have the technology to be able to do that. So I think to get to our 20% goal, we're going to have to look at some big technologies like that. Yeah.
Hi, thanks, Amy. You started with 61 buildings. Do you have any thoughts or plans to expand these programs with air, water, energy beyond the 61 buildings to, say, a next tier down in size?
Yes, we have always had the vision at Envision to replicate. So does that mean smaller buildings within Uptown? Does that mean Ballantyne, which is an area of Charlotte South, or other cities? What I have really pushed back on is let's at least start implementing programs in all 4 of the pillars so we have something to be able to take to the next level. We have other cities calling us, and so, you know, there's the opportunity, is there a way to put it in a box and give those tools to another city? And so, like I said, some of our board members are, let's just start replicating. I'm like, well, let's have something to replicate first. So I would like to see us a year or 2 down the line. I'd like to see where waste goes, especially, because I think that's the one. Energy's awesome, and everyone already understands energy. I think waste is one that's really could really set us apart. So yes, long way to answer. Yes, we're going to. Come on, give me something hard. I have 4 cups of coffee just to be on. Yes.
Yeah, I guess my question was 61 out of. Yeah, sure. My question again: 61 out of the 64 buildings, you know, to get them to participate. I mean, I think that's pretty large percentage. How were you able to do that, and what's the driving force behind it? How willing, I guess, are the companies to get on board and to continue to stay with your plan?
Well, you know, it's a huge, Duke put a lot of energy behind it. And you had the support of Center City Partners, which is our Uptown organization. And it was a lot of cold calls and knocking on doors. I mean, you could speak to this. But I think Charlotte is a unique city that when the city gets behind something and you have a company like Duke and a nonprofit like the Center City Partners and you have the city behind it, everyone wants to be involved, and we're very cooperative around that. It's interesting when other cities call, they're like, there's no way we could do that. And it is pretty unique to Charlotte that we have that ability. And because we've seen some successes, it's interesting, other buildings are like, but we want to be involved. The Carolinas Healthcare, and they're right outside the loop, and they're like, well, just wait. So yeah, Duke is huge credit to that.
Part of the secret there is getting a core group of your community that are bought in, and there comes a point when you are almost shamed if you're not about it. It becomes a virus, which was it's no small challenge, but Charlotte is a very it was a great community to start that, and as Amy, we purposely kept that to 60-some buildings just so that we could really measure that. As you can imagine, everybody has a friend or a business just outside of the circle that we do. But it becomes infectious as a community.
And again, you know, it's a great idea, and to me, I could imagine each of these buildings that are participating having signs saying, yeah, we are participating, and, you know, from customer perspective, yeah, I like these companies that, you know, are doing something about, you know, having more sustainable city. And
Well, and everyone will,
great to
when they ask me about Envision, they're like, oh, you're the kiosk. You've got the kiosk, because there's ginormous kiosks in every building, and this logo is on every door uptown. And what's been really interesting, like over the summer, I had school teachers. I had 3 school teachers call, and what they wanted to do was go and learn more about energy by taking the kids on a tour to these buildings and looking at, you know, the display and figuring out. Then they were like, well, can we figure it out for a building? And this, and I'm like, okay, well, you're getting away. But just the fact that kids are looking at our city and seeing that they're doing this it's been pretty cool. Yeah.
So is there anything in your charter where you're looking at new construction and any standards around, say, LEED certified buildings? Is the city putting any additional requirements on new construction so that everything new that you build is more sustainable from day one?
You know, there's not. However, interestingly, I just had a conversation with the mayor, and he was saying, why don't we start incorporating all of the goals of Envision to incentive when we recruit companies to Charlotte? Let's give incentive points for how well they're doing on each one of those. And so, not directly, you know, Charlotte is very much a carrot community, not a stick community. So getting any kind of policy implemented is very difficult. And, you know, whenever they have a new efficiency or sustainable index that comes out, we are always on the bottom, and it drives me crazy because we're probably better than most, but because our policy, we just don't have it. We have a very weak mayor system. So. No, but we have a couple new buildings going in uptown, and they've already called. How can we be in Envision? And it's difficult because we set the baseline. And so it's the same thing on some of these other pilots. If you don't include all of them, how do you then include them? They can be in the programs, but they're not in the baseline. It gets all kinds of complicated. But yeah, so that's another long answer for you.
Hi, 2 questions.
Yeah.
In the waste stream, sounds like you're monitoring that, but are you also increasing the recycling stream? Because that was a statistic that you put up there. And the second question, are you looking at including transportation as maybe a 5th pillar and other aspects on this whole idea of smart cities and encompassing that into Envision Charlotte?
Yes, so on the waste stream, what we've said is we want a 20% diversion. So one of the things that we want to do is we don't have a good, robust composting program uptown. So if we just put in some composting, and that has a lot to do with smells and rules and regulations, and so we're working through that. But if we took out the compost out of that's going to the landfill, I think that's like 12%. We'd be 12% already. So it's setting the baseline, and we're going to kind of reset the baseline. We've got the audit from last year, but once we start gathering that real-time waste data, also what goes in. Can we get more, less paper towel usage, or whatever also on the other side. So there's multiple programs that we're going to look at. But what's really exciting about this censoring is Wells Fargo, which is one of our big partners, has been looking for one of these technologies to pilot, because they're very into sustainable, green, that sort of thing. And so the city came to me and said, hey, we just talked to this really cool company, Envision, and Wells Fargo had been trying to find a company like this. So we sat down, and in that meeting, literally, Wells Fargo was like, we're hiring you for these 15 buildings. Now please do this for Envision. And so it's been really great to have those partners, because they use us sort of to test some of the things that they're looking for their 150 million square feet. So yes, we're looking at all of those. The sensors, I think, like I said, I think it's going to revolutionize everything. On the transportation side, it would be under the air pillar, and we're bringing in an air expert to talk about what should our initiative be. One of the things about Charlotte, not that I don't want to say everything's rosier in Charlotte, but we don't have a very good transportation system. For me to take a bus, which takes me about 25 minutes to go uptown, to take transportation, it would take me an hour and 22 minutes. So I'm never going to take any of that. So we've talked to several different groups about, there's a company in Indianapolis that's doing it's not going to come to me right now, but they're putting in all of these smart cars or electric cars, and that you just walk up and you can drive them, and they're putting in, does anyone know this? It's like 15,000 charging stations, and you can go literally just get in a car, drive it to a charging station all over the city, and they're looking for their next city. So we had some preliminary conversation. It's a French company, I believe. So
Maybe more specifically, sorry, it's more about transportation management. I know that, you know, some companies are networking their traffic lights and whatnot,
Yeah.
just to ease the flow of traffic amongst around the city's core.
well, the project I was talking about with the data, we're smarting up the government center. That's one of the heaviest corridors for traffic coming in right there. And so we're looking at putting in smart street poles and lamps all through. So it's like an 8-block radius. So yes, we're looking at it in a very small scale right now. There's a lot of discussions around transportation. Like I said, we're kind of far back on that one. So I'm not really sure I want to tackle that yet.
What you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
What does the role of the utility regulator play in the process, and how will utility regulator, what will their role be in trying to expand this to other cities?
Well, the smart energy now, they went through the regulation with them and it was approved. So they have now commercialized that and they are taking it to other markets. But beyond that, the incentive programs they have for the different equipments and purchases, we incorporate into allowing when buildings are looking for new projects. We make sure that we use Duke incentives for that. Does that answer?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I think behind you.
You mentioned that 6%, I think it was 6% of the energy reductions were due to behavioral changes. So how much has had to be invested in just like making the buildings more efficient?
You mean the equipment side of things?
Yeah, on the equipment side of it.
Well, 6.2 is behavior, and we're at 8.4, so 2.2% was equipment upgrades. What we're trying to do, and it's interesting you say that, because as we're going through these energy roundtables, we're going to gather the information on the buildings to say, you know, Duke did all of these audits on all of these buildings, which I'd love to get my hands on, but they signed a non-disclosure and they won't give them to me. So we're having to go back through it individually. But I think what we can do is look at each building, what the opportunities for savings are. And, you know, it becomes a simple kind of math question to say, all right, we've got 11.6% more to go. And how much is that per kilowatt hour or per square foot? And then we can kind of cherry pick the buildings. But as much as I talk nicely to Duke, they will not give me those audits. I don't know, regulators, right?
So what kind of equipment changes did you make? Did you put in like LED lights, make them switch out light bulbs, put in dimmer switches, motion sensors?
For the 2.2.
Yeah, what did you do?
Well, lighting is one of the easiest ones. And so there were several buildings that have done big lighting retrofits. There are a few buildings that are looking at deep energy retrofits, because one of the things that we're trying to get companies to look at, yeah, you can get a 2 to 4 year payback on lights, but you're going to island some of these other projects that you could see some savings if you bring those in. So one of the things that we've done too is qualified energy conservation bonds, which the feds gave out. Charlotte has an allocation of $7 million and the county has $2 million. And so we're looking at the city giving that allocation to Envision Charlotte to manage and give out. And it's just a very inexpensive way to use money. And so we're working through that right now, because what we want to do for these buildings is say, okay, here is the project that's going to get you 20% more efficient. Oh, you need some financing? Here's some financing. Oh, you need to talk to your owner out in California whose energy bill is twice as high and you don't understand why you should do anything here? We'll talk to your owner out in California. Try to get the political will behind us to get these buildings, because it is hard in Charlotte. It's pretty cheap energy out there. So when you own buildings in multiple markets, it makes it difficult to see those savings or to justify the savings. But it's the gamut. You name it. It's heat pumps, it's lighting, it's dashboards, it's recommissioning, it's all of it.
And so that's what you've done to get that extra 2% current.
Individual buildings have done those projects, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I'm really interested by the behavioral stuff. First of all, I don't know if 6.2% is good or not in the universe of asking people to change the way they leave stuff on in the office. I don't know if Duke has revealed how much it cost to do the outreach and the, 1,500 people getting involved in smart energy now, to get a cost-benefit analysis of what that is worth. And finally, I don't know if they've talked about persistency of those results. If people, if there's any information about how long that lasts, how long plastic crabs on desks, yield energy reductions over time, or other methods they're using.
Well, I think Duke hired some analysis to do a study that said you would see 4 to 8% savings in behavior. So I think 6.2 is good when you're looking at the 4 to 8%. I don't know the behind the curtain numbers in terms of investment. I'm not sure that's published anywhere. But what we look at it as 10 million in savings for those buildings is huge economic development driver. So regardless of the investment, it's the right thing to do, and it's cheaper for our businesses. Sustainable is going to be hard. We have our board member from Duke's always like, now that was a snapshot in time, Amy. Snapshot in time, you got to keep it on everyone's mind. Thank you for the pressure. So yes, you're right. So what I'm hoping for is this Julebug app will continue that. Plus, they're still out there working with our buildings every day, keeping them focused on those results. The other thing I would say too is that what we found is you've got 61 property managers. They want to look good to their tenants. So when they have something to bring to their tenants, it makes them look good. So when we say we'll have an energy game for you, or we'll do a lunch and learn, and you can learn about sustainable actions and what you can do, that makes the business owner look good to their tenants. And so it's been a really unique, interesting, kind of fun partnership with these property managers, because everyone's trying to get that edge of how they're building and what they're doing for their people is better. We just did a huge event with the NASCAR building, and they had a ride and drive. So all of our electric car partners, BMW i3 and the Nissan Leaf, we got them out there for their tenants, and their tenants loved it. And it made her look great because she brought all these electric cars because they just launched their workstation or their workplace challenge around charging. So sustainability is going to be hard, but I do think that it's the partnership with the property managers is a huge driver for that. But ask me in 2 years. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I would like to thank our audience for joining us here in the room this afternoon, as well as the online audience through Green Tech Media. I would also like to thank our utility customers, Charlotte Mecklenburg and Duke Energy, for letting us be part of this collaboration. And most of all, Amy, would like to thank you for coming to Itron Utility Week and sharing the story of Envision Charlotte. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.